I'm gonna show you some tricks about roasting meat. Don't worry, it's not that hard, but there's a couple simple steps that make it way better, and we'll talk about how to carve it properly. I got a big roast here. I think this is a sirloin roast, and I've done a couple things. There's steps I always take before I deal with any kind of meat is I will take it out of the package, especially if it's been vacuum packed. That vacuum pack's gonna suck in a lot of the blood into the meat. That flavor's gonna stay there, and it tastes metallic, and it's not great. So simple, what I do is I got a little baking sheet with a little wire rack on it. I'll take the piece of meat. I will get rid of any sort of excess liquid on it that seems kind of bloody. And then I put salt on it. And I don't put a ton of salt on it. I just put enough salt like I'm seasoning it. And then I will stick it in my fridge overnight. If it's a big, huge piece of meat, like a whole strip loin, I'll do it for a whole week. Essentially air drying it a bit. And it will change that flavor, and you'll have a denser piece of meat. It'll carve or cut much nicer. And it won't have that sort of taste to it, that metallic blood iron taste. When I like to roast a piece of meat, I'll sear it in a hot cast iron pan, and I'll just put that whole pan right in the oven. Maybe I'll throw some chopped up onions or vegetables underneath it, depending on what I'm going for. But otherwise, I put salt and pepper on it. Sometimes pepper, not always. Salt is an absolute must. Another great tip before you put your meat into the oven is you're gonna wanna let it sit out for a bit. If you let the meat warm up to room temperature, it's gonna cook a little bit more evenly, a little bit quicker. But evenness is kind of what you're going for, because you don't really want that raw, chewy, rare in the middle and medium on the outside. That's not what medium rare is. It's not medium on the outside and rare in the middle. It's supposed to be the same all the way through. So bringing it up to room temperature really does seem to help getting you that nice even cooking. One thing I also like to do, just in general when I'm figuring out what I'm doing, is just make sure that when you're looking at the meat, you understand which way the grain is running. It's a little bit easier to see the grain of the meat when it's raw, because when you cut it, you're going to want to make sure you cut it across the grain. That'll give you maximum tenderness. And frankly, you can buy some real cheap pieces of meat, cut them the right way and cut them nice and thin, cook them, let them rest. They're beautiful. You don't always have to buy the most expensive piece on the shelf. Just got to know what you're doing. All right, I've got a beautifully roasted piece of meat here. I've cut the strings off, and now we're going to talk about carving it. Now, before I even get a knife close to this thing, I let it rest. You know what? I heard once that you should let your meat rest for at least 30% of the amount of time it's spent cooking. Now, while in some cases that might be a bit overkill, you definitely want to let it sit for 15 or 20 minutes. If you cut a piece of meat and you see steam coming out of it, that's way too hot. The meat's too tense. It's been in an oven, and it's going to squish all the juices out of it. Think of the meat like a bit of a sponge. And in the oven, under all that heat, you're squishing it. And when it comes out, you can let it relax a little bit, and then it's going to reabsorb all those juices. And even if you've overcooked it a little bit, whatever, it'll still be nice and juicy. If you cut it too soon, all those juices are going to come flooding out, going to be all over your cutting board, and your meat's going to be dry. And that's not good. That's not what you want. So before I put this in the oven, I was sure to check which way the grain's running. You can also take a look. You can see on the ends where it looks like almost like the end grain of the cutting board, it's the end grain of the meat. I want to cut across that. If you cut with it, maybe you get it wrong the first time, your first slice, if you look at it and you see long straight lines, stop what you're doing, turn the piece of meat around, change the angle of your knife, whatever you're doing. One of the things you want when you're slicing is a nice long knife. This is a Masashi Kuroshu. I love this knife. This thing is so sharp, you have no idea. I'll be able to cut this paper thin. It's going to be so much fun. When I use it, I'm not going to push it, and I'm not going to try and saw back and forth like a crazy person. You saw back and forth, your meat's going to get kind of wavy and jagged. What you want is nice, smooth texture to show that you've got good knife skills. I can start at the tip and slide forwards. Good Lord, this thing is sharp. I'm not adding a lot of force, but I got a nice smooth slice here. I can also start at the back, and you see when I start at the back, I get to use a lot of the knife here. But you can see what I'm not doing is this. You can see these ridges here that come from every time I've changed the direction of the knife. That's just not professional. You're a professional. Do it the right way. And you can just slide the knife through. It's a really gentle thing. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it, maybe a little bit. And it's nice to have a knife this long because I've got more length to use. When you're sliding the knife, you're doing a nice job cutting. You're not pressing, ripping, or tearing. You're actually slicing. Even though this piece of meat's a little bit overcooked, it's been well rested, it's still nice and moist. I cut it with a nice sharp knife. I didn't shred it apart. It's delicious. If you want, you can sprinkle a little salt on it after you've sliced it if you really want extra flavor and destroy your blood pressure. Whatever, it's up to you. A really nice Sujihiki designed for beautiful slices of meat might be right up your alley. It's not going to be your daily driver, but you're sure going to be happy that you've got a beautiful long knife for slicing your meat. You can find them in our stores, Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa, and Vancouver. We have lovely humans there to help you pick a really nice Sujihiki. You can also find us online, shop at our web store, knifewear.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We look forward to seeing you there. Have a great day.